Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. Today, we're going to discuss a bit about the six-step approach to successfully adopting competitor-based pricing. We do this while we're live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And the goal of today's webinar is to give you a hands-on approach on starting with competitor-based pricing and to give you some of the insights on how we do it, or actually how we do it, and some of the benefits and some of the risks involved with it. So let me start off with telling you about two cases in the recent 3 to 6 months where competitor pricing might actually have been a challenge. So if you have seen the second quarter results from McDonald's, you've seen they had a steep decline in revenue and also in margin, actually. So the stock actually got a pretty big hit, and the reason for that is that they have been increasing prices across the board due to the inflation. One of the things they actually didn't really account for is they were increasing the prices a lot more than local cafeterias or snack bars were doing. So what happened is McDonald's came actually in the same competitive field as local snack bars, which actually have most of the time a better product, better service. So they were losing out on a lot of money because they were not having the advantage anymore of being the cheapest. So this was a really good lesson for McDonald's in order to evaluate the pricing strategy again. And this was also actually communicated once they shared their financial results of last quarter. So I think that's a case to really think about on competitor pricing and the impact on it, and that even McDonald's every now and then has a slip up. And I have another example. It's more for the Dutch market. If you look, Jumbo, it's a Dutch supermarket, and an interesting thing happened here as well. So Jumbo wasn't doing so well, and the reason for that is they were comparing themselves and doing competitive-based pricing based upon price fighters like Lidl, Aldi, and we're trying to compete with those, while at the same time offering an excellent service, having a lot of local food, etc. And there you can see if your strategic vision is not aligned, so you want to have excellent service and you want to be a price fighter, you're going to get issues because your operations are too expensive to foot the bill. So what happened here is after the new CEO came in, they readjusted their pricing strategy and now really are more focused on having the excellent service and going a step further and really being customer centric. And they gave some good results to them. So as well for Jumbo, they made the wrong mistake by comparing themselves with the wrong competitors. So taking that all in consideration, I think we can say that pricing is an important factor for larger corporations, but also for smaller corporations. So that's what we're going to discuss today. This webinar will be hosted by myself. So I'm Roy, I'm the Customer Success Manager of Simpson. And Arjan, he's the co-founder of Simpson. And you will see him later on again in the presentation. He will share a bit about the strategic impact and what you should take into consideration for when to use competitive pricing and whatnot. So let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the agenda of today. And these are the 6 steps I want to discuss with you. So the first one is about product selection criteria. Then we go into strategic considerations. The next step is identifying a relevant product and competitors. After that, we are going to look into how do you gather and how do you analyze the data from your competitors. After that, if we have all that information, we can start implementing a pricing strategy. And then we, of course, looking into how can we automate it and how can we make this continuous improvement feedback loop while you then actually go back again and evaluate, do I have the right product selected? Do I have the right strategy, etc. So this is an ongoing loop. So let's start with the first chapter, product selection criteria. For the people that have been following Simpson for a bit longer, you probably have seen this slide before. In Simpson, we kind of see there are 5 main groups how you can actually divide your products. We see the top key value items, we see core items, slow movers, you have your own brand products, sometimes RRP or supplier-based products. For the competitor-based strategy, our approach is that we really look at the top key value items. Why? Because they are highly price sensitive most of the time. And also, they are mostly responsible for driving traffic on your website and getting that in. So keep in mind that we say roughly 10% of your portfolio, might sometimes be 15 or 20%, but that pretty much tops it out, should be in a competitive strategy. And this is good to look at it, because then you only have your key value items in that strategy, and you're not wasting a lot of money and resources on getting your competitive data for all the other ones in there as well. So if we go to the next slide, we can actually see on how to identify and why you need to identify key value items. So as I just said, not all of your products are suitable for a competitive strategy. You can take the lead product from your category or from the brand, and make a follow strategy for the other products. So the reason for this is you don't want to spend a lot of resources, because in the end it's rather expensive, of course, to keep on tracking every single day, multiple times a day, on all these different competitor websites. To go in there, either it's a highly manual task, or if you automate it, there is also of course cost involved in doing all those scrapes every single time. So you want to limit those products who actually have the highest impact and that are actually key value items. And we also then think that the key value items should actually be used to achieve your pricing goals, right? So because they are highly price sensitive, if you price those correctly into your competitive field, your customers, your clients will actually have the perception of that they're getting great value for money. And this, of course, helps you to maintain your brand perception and your customer retention, because customers will, of course, keep coming back if they feel like, yeah, they're getting value for money. If we go to the next slide, the question is then, how do you identify key value items? There are different kinds of metrics and pointers you can use. We mostly use these four, for example. So we look at times the product actually appears in a basket or order or in a shopping cart. So how often do products, if customers are in your web shop or in your shop, how often do they actually put these products into their shopping cart or the basket? If they do that a lot, it's mostly the reason people come into your store for that specific product. And then also the order. So where is the ranking in the product, right? So where can I actually find them? So if most of the time what we see happening is that people are shopping for a specific product, and that specific product they will put first in their basket, and then they will look around to see if there are other products they can either add or substitute the other product towards to. So the order ranking also says us something, and also the order sequences, so how often is it actually being ordered, also tells us something if it's a key value item. Another one, for example, could be search volume. So how often is this specific product being searched for, right? So maybe show via Google Analytics the top 20 or top 100 products, or 200 or 500 products that are searched the most for on your website. There is a big chance that those are a part of your key value items. Okay, next slide. So what we do in Simpson, which I think is an interesting approach if we talk about competitor-based pricing, those key value items, if you put those competitive in the field, what you see is that people would actually order a basket, right? What I was just talking about is they are offering multiple products at the same time. So Coolblue in this case is a great example for it, where they would say, do you want to finish your order at, so if I'm looking for shaving stuff, they ask me to add specific other products in there. And this is a very strong opportunity where they can say, okay, so I want to add these products to it, which makes me spend more money for this on Coolblue, right? And at the same time, I don't have the perception they're expensive, because the product I was actually looking for, which is the Philips shaver in this case, is something that is properly priced, and the other stuff added to it, like the knives or the cleaning materials, is something I probably need, and they put a higher margin on top of those, so my share of wallet increases. So this is a great example on how a basket could possibly look like. And then how would it then look like if we do the actual analysis? So what we try to do with a basket analysis and the basket strategy, so the key value item is priced strategically, smartly, compared to the other competitors. So that are the key value items, that are highly purchased. And we can see that in here. So which order, which basket is, how often are these products are actually bought together, and then we can make a very smart pricing strategy out of it, and can combine this key product with 2 or 3 margin generating products into a specific basket. So next slide. So after we've done our product selection, we need to think about the strategic consideration. And I would like to give the floor here to Arjan.
Yes, thank you, Roy, for this great introduction and discussing the first step. I will move forward to discuss the second step indeed. If you're going to consider what kind of strategy and what kind of position we should take in the market, this tool can help you. It's the tool of Tracy and Wiersema about the value strategies. And it offers three type of value disciplines you can choose as a company to understand what is your positioning and how do I distinguish from the market. I think it's very well-known model, but it's very interesting to plot some cases and also the use cases Roy discussed in the beginning. So starting with the first one on top, product leadership, I think the best example you can give is of course Apple. Um, in a couple of weeks, the expectation is that they will launch the new iPhone again. The market is really looking for what are the new innovations, what are the new specs, attributes of this phone. And of course, this is why product is so successful and why Apple is so successful because it's really focusing on their product. So the characteristics of a company active in this value driver as a product leader is, of course, product innovation. You're really experimenting with a lot of trends. You're continuously looking for new products and beat the competition with your product. Another value strategy is customer intimacy. Coolblue is one of the examples. Roy already mentioned them. I'm not going to explain Coolblue in too much detail because it's already discussed, I think, in a lot of other webinars as a kind of example company. But here, especially here in the Netherlands, it's a school book example of putting the customer first, really focusing on adding services, long-term relationships with your customer, and of course, focusing on the customer loyalty. Um, so yeah, what you see and what Coolblue does, they're providing a really good customer experience through all of their communication channels. Um, they're looking for good customer service also after you've bought the product, and you invest in this long-term relation. So not a one-time transaction, but really looking how can we increase the share of wallet and how can we make sure the customer increases his purchases and his customer lifetime value. Um, this extra services, but also putting this customer first, is often a premium in the market. So you as a customer can get extra service, so you don't always have to compete on price because this service this has a value. The last value driver, a value strategy, we can explain is the one from operational excellence. In this case, you as a company really try to optimize your operational processes. So as an example here, you see Action. Action is a great example that streamlined all of their processes. They have very low operational cost. If you enter a store of Action, yeah, you don't see a lot of people that are service orientated. They're doing their job. They're doing that really well, but they're focusing on the effective processes. And this is also why they can offer such a low price for a lot of their products, because they're focusing on decreasing their cost and still having a healthy margin. You see, most of our customers in Simpson, they are between operational excellence as a value driver or customer intimacy. And especially for customer intimacy, it's really important to see, okay, what is the premium um, word in the market? So what is my customer willing to pay a premium for my extra service compared to the competitors who are more focusing on the price or operational excellence. And on the other hand, if you're a company really focusing on operational excellence, um, for what price, especially for what key value items, can I attract the customers to my store, and where can I get extra margin to maintain a healthy company. Um, Going back to the use cases where Roy started with McDonald's and Jumbo, I think it's also really interesting to put them on this model, because we have McDonald's, who is, I think, very well known of his operational excellence. Their processes are streamlined. It's really a schoolbook example of operational excellence. By increasing their prices, they really were competing with the local snack bar or other restaurants in the market, which could actually offer more services, because they are more known for having a good service, but also make the different kind of products based upon customer desires. So it's really hard to compete for them, and that's why McDonald's really need to make a choice. Do we stay as an operational excellence where we really focus on having a good price, or are we moving towards a different value driver? And I think based upon the article, the decision is already made. And for Jumbo, it's actually the same, but then vice versa. I think Jumbo is really known by the seven certainties as a customer intimacy company. But then again, competing with companies who are more in operational excellence, that's really hard to do, because you offer more services and the customer is willing to pay more for that. So companies really need to make a choice, and that choice is also really related to the price position you take in the market. So yeah, this model can help you if you're looking for a good positioning. And later on in this presentation, Roy will also present different dimensions how you can plot competitors in the market. Um, yeah, it's always balancing between long-term profitability and customer satisfaction. That's the game that you can play with a good pricing strategy. So even though you're a company active in operational excellence or customer intimacy, you need to have a good price to don't lose a good price image, or to don't lose your customers. On the other hand, it has its limits, because you also need to focus on your long-term profitability, and that's why, yeah, a good pricing strategy and good price tactics and a good pricing tool can help. Another dimension you can take from a company perspective is to a product perspective. 40%, almost 40% of our customers use already the product dimension into their pricing strategy. And this visual helps you to understand what is the extra value in it. So the product lifecycle has a couple of stages. You start with an introduction stage, for example, the new iPhone. It's not on the market yet. So the first sales come in the introduction phase, and later on, it is in the growth phase. More and more people adapt the product, and later on, when also new versions, maybe of iPhones comes up, you reach a maturity stage or even a decline phase when the product is really in his end of life cycle. Um, if you have made your company a consideration, it's also really important that you take the product dimension into account. Because if you are developing as a product leader, for example, Apple, a product that's really new to the market, you have kind of pricing freedom to determine what is my new product worth, and what is my new product, how much is my customer willing to pay for that new feature or for that new spec. You have all kind of methods to do that. Conjoint analysis, I think, is one of the most well-known methods to do that, to determine, okay, what is the value my customer wants to pay for this new product. Later in the product life cycle, you get more data. You get more data from the market, but also more competitors come into the market. So you could set slowly a different price strategy to maintain the sales, but also to keep an attractive price later in this product life cycle. And yeah, at the last stages of the product life cycle, you see you have so many competitors or maybe copycats in the example of an iPhone that yeah you need to price your product really a little bit on top of your cost price. So you're really fighting for the product at the end of the life cycle to still get the sales in of this product. So this is a kind of a natural flow of which strategy could belong to which product lifecycle phase. And this is also how companies are using it because depending on um, yeah the stage, you could set a different strategy in order to to achieve your pricing goal. And also, if you're a product leader, I think it's really straightforward. But if you're acting in operational excellence or customer intimacy, you can have a lot of products which you don't produce by your own, but this product really yeah differ in a product life cycle. So I can imagine yeah you don't have these value-based strategies, but you have a lot of products that enter directly into a kind of a growth phase or decline phase. And yeah, this visual can help you to decide, okay, what is the right strategy, but also how do I execute it in an automated way. So this was the second step. I think later in the webinar, yeah, we have some other touch points about these strategic considerations. But the lessons learned is that you cannot skip this step to have a good price positioning. So I'll give the floor back to Roy. He will explain how to identify relevant products and competitors.
Thank you, Arjan, for the clarification specifically on the product lifecycle. I think that's a very interesting one to look at, and it's yeah used a lot by our customers as well. But let me continue because once we have selected the products, once we know the strategy we want to follow, we need to identify at some point what are the main competitors we have, right? So what are our key competitors? Because if I do a Google Shopping search based upon EAN, it might be I find 80, 90, or 100 competitors sometimes. So how do you then select your key competitors, the competitors that yeah are actually most relevant to you and you want to yeah compare yourself against? And this is an example where we took the two dimensions of price and quality because it's pretty much the most known, but you can get any in here. So you can have price against delivery time or maybe extra services you offer, or there are many different options you can take here. But the important one is that once you have selected these, you're going to look at all your competitors and you're just going to plot them. So you plot yourself, where do you think you are, and then you plot your competitor B, and then C, and D, and E, and F, and then you just keep on plotting till you have an overview of yourself. And what you can then do, if we go to the next slide, you can see the next step where you can actually start circling groups of competitors that are pretty much together. So, for example, we're looking here at an airline example where we can see the amount of departures versus the quality or the price you're paying. So you have Delta, United, and American. They have many departures, so destinations around the world, and the prices are relatively high. And then you also have the price fighters on the bottom low side, where don't have a lot of departures, but can do for a low fair amount. So think about a Ryanair, think about a TUI here in the Netherlands, etc., versus the KLM, the Uniteds, the Deltas, etc. And it doesn't make sense for United to compete with an Envoy, for example, of an ExpressJet, because they're completely different people they're focusing upon. They have different target groups, but also different price setting and different service levels. So are you a premium airline who has all inclusive with food and drinks, etc., or is the upsell that you need to pay for any extra room, luggage, etc.? So there's a different pricing for different groups of people. And then also, if you have, even if you're flying to the same destination, for Delta, it doesn't make sense to compare themselves, as I said, to Envoy, because they have different service levels. So it's extremely important to understand how does your competitive field look like, and to have this competitor matrix for yourself filled out. And keep in mind, this can differ per country. This can even differ per region or per city you're working in. Am I competing with a lot of local stores, or am I competing with international stores? So it's extremely important to have the agility and the understanding of how is my competitive field behaving and what's my role in it, and to whom or what do I want to compare. You can also make differentiations on product group, on categories. So there's a lot of variations you can think of, but we think this is the easiest way to start out with it, and just to plot them, and see what are my main competitors based upon different dimensions, actually. So we go to the next slide. And one of the things, for example, in Simpson, what we use is, as I said, is I can. This is a typical EAN Google Shopping search, for example, and you get so many competitors. But one of the dimensions, for example, we use in Simpson for a lot of e-commerce companies is of my full product portfolio. What's the coverage? So how many percent of my product portfolio is also offered by my direct competitors? So you can then see, are there new emerging competitors? Is there somebody who's all of a sudden a lot cheaper than you are, more expensive? And this might influence your strategy, right? If you want to be a bit more on a market penetration strategy, or maybe you're more on a already more in a maturity stage where you can say, well, I really want to utilize now because I have established my market share in this case. So this is an overview, for example, we use in Simpson for that. And now I just have a question for all of you. It's just a small poll where later on during the webinar we will come back into. But I'm just kind of curious with this audience to understand if you're already actively monitoring your competitors. 4 options. Yes, but I'm manually checking websites of the competitors. Or yes, we are using scrapers to get fully automated competitor prices in already. Option 3, yes, I get competitor information, for example, via my sales department, right? So you get somebody purchasing things and they say, well, you're too expensive. Whoa, this is a very good deal. It's very cheap, and you're gathering in it that way. Or you're not doing it at all. So please put your answers in the chat, just 1, 2, 3, or 4. I will wait for 10 seconds or so for everybody to answer it. And then later on during the session, we will get back to it. The next step for the 6-step approach, step 4, is the gathering and the analyzing of the data. So how do you gather competitor data? Oh, there are different approaches that can be used in the market. Let's go to the next slide so we can actually go through them. So we have the option, basically there is an EAN option, there is a URL option, and I don't have either of those, so we need to build our own competitor scrape. So if we start with the first one, let's go for the auto match EAN search. So what we do there is an EAN of the product available, and it's a product that is offered by multiple competitors on the market. So it's a commodity product. We can use Google Shopping, Amazon, Coolblue, Bol, Alibaba, you name it. We can do the EAN scrape on that, get all the result out of it, and it's automatically matched. It's the same product with the same volume against your product, so you have a very easy overview on what's happening. But not all the products have a EAN, or if they even have an EAN, it might be a unique EAN because you're importing it from China, or you have your own products. Then it becomes more difficult, right? Because there is not one identifier to get all that competitor data out of the market. So then you can actually do a scrape on the product name, or sometimes the manufacturer ID, where we then can find the right results. Or another option, of course, always could be, if you're now already, for example, manually checking all the products you have, you can always provide us with a direct URL, for example, and then we do the auto matching. And then you can always easily select, okay, so this product should be matched against that product of my competitor. And then we can just automatically repeat the process. So every day, 5 times a day, 10 times a day, every week, every month, every year, we can do the analysis and go through it and get all that competitor data in. Okay. Then we have another step. And this is a bit more of a complicated one, because even if after your EAN or after the description of the product, we can't really find a match, it will become a bit more of a manual exercise. And basically what happens then is there is image recognition, there is specific attributes of products that can be used to provide you with an overview of products. So, for example, in our case, that would be, let's say we have a product ID, and we have, let's say we're looking for a swimming pool that is, I don't know, 10 square meters and so many liters. You can imagine there's a lot of variants, and there is not a specific EAN code attached to this product, because there's a lot of products going on Amazon and Google Shopping, etc. So we can fill in all these specifications, and then basically we get a list or a drop-down menu in Simpson that's going to say this is an 80% match, this is a 90% match, this is an 85% match. And then you can just manually select, okay, then this product URL has been saved for Simpson, and then next time we automatically scrape that information from that specific product. And so you can keep on building your own intelligent competitor scrape actually, or database, and then we get all that information in there. And what's now the interesting part of it? If we keep on scraping that information in a specific order, right? So we do this daily or weekly or monthly or 5 times a day. This is when you unlock the true power, because then you have a lot of information and you can see, hey, how often are my competitors are changing prices? How often do I see my prices? Do they happen at a specific moment in time? Do I always do it on Monday? Okay, so if they do it on Monday, maybe I should change my prices on Tuesday or Monday afternoon, right? So you can always benefit from their price changes. But then first, you need, of course, to have the data to be able to analyze it and to recognize these patterns. So after we've gathered all that information, we go into the next slide. We can actually go to the next step, which is step 5, which is about the implementing of the pricing strategy. Because now we have done the product selection, we have the strategic consideration, we've identified the relevant competitors we want to match against, we have all that information in the tool or somewhere, and then step 5 is, I want to make use of that information. So if we do the implementation of pricing strategies, there are, in a high overview, let's say there are 5 typical competitor pricing strategies you can do. One is, I want to have higher prices than my competitors, right? So, for example, this could be, as Arjan just stated, that, for example, there is a premium on the services you offer, and on average, people are willing to pay 2, 3, 4, 5% more than your direct competitors will offer the same products, but not your services. So what you can do is you can follow the prices of your competitor, be 5% more expensive, because that's the willingness to pay and the extra value you add. So you always are following the market, but keep the right price distance to the direct competitors in order to maximize your margin. There is also price matching. So there is also a case to be made that you can say, okay, well, we're pretty much on the same level here of services. There's not something that really distributes me. I don't want to charge more, but I definitely also don't want to price any lower, because I don't want to start a price war or anything like that. You can also say, okay, I just want to match my competitor prices. And then every single time the new product prices comes in, you automatically readjust your competitor prices to match against what your competitors are doing. This is a very passive strategy. But of course, you already are dynamically pricing and following the market there where needed. You can also go for the lower price strategy. So if you, for example, going for operational excellence, where you have really optimized your processes and you can offer your products cheaper, but you don't have any extra services or things like that. So think, for example, here about drop shippers. For example, they're very good at that. They offer the lowest possible price, so they can say, I want to follow my competitors, but I always want to be 1, 2, 3, 5, 10% cheaper than my direct competitors to get all that business and bring them to my web shop. Or, for example, if you talk about key value item prices in combination with the basket analysis, which is an interesting strategy as well, where we can say, okay, so for my main key value items, I want to have this very competitive pricing strategy where I might want to be a bit cheaper than my direct competitors, to bring them to your website, to generate that traffic. And then together with the other products that are bought together with your key value item, you increase the margin slightly. So in the end, the share of wallet increases, the amount of money spent increases, while the customer has the perception of still having value for money, and having a good deal. So that's also a very known strategy, or even what we see as well for the lower prices. If, as Arjan already described before, there is a product at the end of the customer at the product life cycle, and you want to get rid of it, you can just say, okay, so I am perfectly fine, follow the market, be 5% cheaper just to get the volume out of it, and making sure I'm not selling it at a loss. So putting in a minimum margin of 5 or 10 or 15% or what you're happy with, and you're just following market dynamics, be the cheapest, get rid of it, and you're good to go. We also have price skimming. And then basically we come back to, for example, the what Arjan already mentioned before as well with the Apple phone, right? So you have the first mover experience, people who really want to have the newest technology, etc. So what you do with price skimming is you start the highest possible price you can charge for your product, right? And people are still willing to buy it. And what you do is you slowly and gradually decrease the price the moment there are more competitors coming in, or you've already utilized the most amount of actually the first mover advantage, or people actually already spend their money on it. Everybody now already has the new iPhone, or a new one comes out of it, right? So if the new part of it, etc., you slowly start decreasing the prices, and we call that price skimming. And then, as I just said, we have the key value item strategy, where you then really focus upon those key value items, have those rightly priced in the market on that sweet spot, and have the other products, the substitute products, or actually more the complementary products towards it, slightly higher to really utilize and optimize the value and the money spent on that side. So we go to the next slide. So what we see there, and then we go into the last part, is how then am I going to automate and continuously improve on this process, right? So the next slide will actually show us shortly in Simpson, for example, how we can automate this. There are more tools out there that can do this. And if you look at automation, what I think is the best part of it, you have actually the opportunity to fully, specifically with competitor-based price, to fully automate this. And this gives you way more efficiency, because you directly can respond to price changes of your customer, which actually provides that you have a specific price position in the market that is aligned with your strategy, which helps your brand, and which actually really does help to have the right value towards your customers. We see happening with a lot of our clients that previously they got a lot of discussions when there was sales that they were saying, well, you're very expensive, etc. And now they can just follow the market, and they get more money out of the products in the end, because customers are actually buying now with them instead of going to the competitors. So going into this, how do you automate this? In Simpson, we have, for example, the competitor-based block, where I can decide which specific position in the market I want to have. So currently in here, it's shown on average, but I can say I want to be the cheapest, I want to be the second cheapest, third cheapest in the market. Average, I want to be the most expensive, second in the market, third in the market, whatever. So Simpson really gives you the opportunity to keep a position and hold that position. And then also you can say, with how many percent do I want to be more expensive or cheaper compared to the price position I'm looking in. So if I want to be the cheapest in the market, I can say I just want to be the cheapest and maybe 1% cheaper to be a bit more of an aggressive strategy. But I can also say, I have a premium product, I have a lot of services on here, so I know my customers are willing to pay 4 or 5% more than my direct 2 or 3 key competitors. Then I have the option of selecting key competitors. I get the option of putting in the 2-3% and just follow the market and be 2-3% more expensive, which actually results into that you're automatically following the market and are actually really helping in your positioning and getting the most out of your added value. Then you have another option where you can say in Simpson is, how many competitors should we find before we even execute a strategy? Because maybe you have the strategy that you want to be the cheapest in the market, but this is only relevant if there are at least 3 or 4 in the market, right? Or maybe I only want to use a competitor-based strategy if 2 or 3 or 4 of my key competitors are at least there offering the same product. Otherwise, I want to follow my own strategy. That option you have as well. And then you can also select how many historical days should Simpson look back in order to determine what is the lowest price point. So this really corresponds with the volatility of the market. Are you in a B2B industry? Maybe you want to do price changes once a month. You, for example, look back 30 days. But if you are an e-commerce business, maybe you want to scrape 5 times a day, because it's extremely important to keep on adjusting those prices. So I have a small video here, which I will show you now, which shows you in a more dynamic way on how to set these things up in Simpson. So I can select here, of course, what I just set my price position. I can select the difference in price I want to set up. I have in here as well the amount of competitors. There is an outlier removal in here, which is also extremely important, which Simpson automatically takes out any weird things. And here you can see the key competitors I want to select. So I have the option of following the whole market, or just some key competitors I find interesting, I want to go towards to. And also in Simpson, as I just showed here, you can build the strategy so you can keep minimum margins in there. So just follow the market, but have your safety margins in there to make sure you're never going below that 20 or 30% margin you want to achieve, or have a notification so you know, hey, my market is actually going below this minimum margin amount. Maybe I should either renegotiate with my supplier, or I want to follow it, and it's okay, and I'll take a little bit less of the margin for today. So if we then go to the next slide, so after we've set up the strategies, we of course need to find a way on how can we improve those strategies, and how can we monitor that we are working on the right things. So one of the things Simpson is looking at, for example, am I having my margin target? Am I actually reaching that? And how is that compared to the previous months? And if we go one slide further, I can see on a strategy level, how are my strategies performing, right? So I can see that my elasticity strategy is doing great, but I can see in this case, my competitor strategy is a bit of a hassle, right? I'm not reaching my margin target. So maybe instead of being the cheapest in the market or the second cheapest in the market, maybe I want to be average in the market. So one of the things that's very interesting in here, which we actually figured out together with one of our customers, that's in the beauty industry. If we're talking about makeup, they thought the best positioning as a price fighter would have been being the cheapest in the market or matching the cheapest in the market. However, we saw a decline in revenue and in quantity sold, and it happened actually due to the fact that apparently the association in the market is that if I'm the cheapest in the market with regards to makeup, it has to be rubbish, it has to be garbage. So people were not buying it anymore. So we experimented, which can be rather easily done in Simpson, by not being the cheapest in the market, not being the second cheapest in the market, but going actually to the fourth cheapest in the market. And actually that was the sweet spot. And we saw margin increase, we saw revenue increase. So this is what you want to keep on monitoring, right? And this is where you keep on having this evaluation loop and the continuous improvement loop. And this also goes into if you have your margin per strategy assignment. So we can actually see, based upon different attributes we use, here we went for a value matrix where we said high margin, high volume, high margin, low volume, etc. And then I can see here which products are contributing the most and which one are the less in that strategy of elasticity and competitor, which has been selected here. So you can really do a deep dive on which attributes, which customers, which categories, which brands are really doing a good job. So if we go into the next slide, we see in here, we see the margin per product. So actually on a product level, we can even go a further deep dive into it. So if we go to the next slide. So our 6-step approach looks as follows. Step 1, product selection criteria. Step 2, make your strategic consideration. Step 3, identify relevant product and competitors. 4 is gather that data. 5 is implementing the pricing strategies. And 6 is automating and continuously improve. And this cycle keeps on happening and keeps on continuing. If we go to the next slide, Arjan, I'll give the floor back to you to give us the results of the poll.
Yes, thank you very much, Roy. I had a look indeed on the LinkedIn comments, but also on the YouTube. I saw that the majority voted on YouTube. The conclusion is that the majority answered for 2. The interesting was that they also had some combinations. So you also saw that there's a 1 and 2 as an answer. So some products you're probably manually checking because it's hard to set up scrapers. And also some products you can already fully automate. So I think that's interesting that it's not yeah, one answer you can give, of course. Multiple answers are possible. So thanks all for participating. Um, it's nice to hear some feedback and to understand the level of competitor monitoring you're currently doing. Yeah, time is flying when you're having fun. I think we need to go to the questions. If you have any questions, we are completely live. My suggestion is to put your questions on LinkedIn because then we see these questions popping up here on LinkedIn Live. On YouTube, it's a little bit harder to monitor that. So if you have questions, please use the LinkedIn chat of the live stream, and then we can answer them. Um, we will start with a question we often get. Um, and the question is, we get a lot of these questions from the companies that are interested in using our pricing software. If everyone is using competitive pricing software in our market, of course, aren't we creating a race to the bottom? And this is a really interesting question, which also leads to internal discussions, Amos, because you can answer that in a couple of ways. As already discussed earlier in the webinar, yeah, I think when you talk about the product itself, it's a natural flow that a lot of products go into a life cycle. So by the end of the life cycle, of course, you're more fighting for these last customers to buy your product. So of course, the focus can be more to a cost-driven focus with a healthy margin. Um, and yeah, so that's I think competition is always really good and also depends on the life cycle. It also depends a little bit on the strategy you like to follow, because you can be referring to the model we discussed. You can have a strategy more focused on operational excellence or more on the customer intimacy. Um, yeah, and if you're really focusing on operational excellence, you will end at fighting for the price. But if you're adding more service, then you can add more value, where the customer is willing to pay a premium. So this is really bit dependent on the strategic direction you choose. Um, and as an example, I think you can take the airline industry, which is also discussed here. Ryanair, it's completely okay if you have Ryanair fighting for the best price, and all other competitors are also fighting for this lowest price. But once you have this customer in, yeah, you can upsell this customer with other services, just as drinks during the flight or extra luggage or so
I,
it's
I,
it's it's price war is not a bad thing, and probably Roy has some addition
well,
to this.
yeah, to elaborate on that one, I think Ryanair is by far the best example of it, right? So they get you on board with their key value item, which is a ticket, and then you look at all the extra services offered where you're paying a lot. All of a sudden, you have to pay 50 euros extra because your trolley doesn't fit in the exact same thing they want you to fit it in, right? Or if you want to have a beer or a Coke or a coffee, you're paying 4 or 5 euros all of a sudden. So, this is really about having a key value item strictly priced with having other substitutes or adjectives to it to really increase the share of wallet. So I think they're doing that very well. Yeah. So to be honest, so far I have we are working in actually a lot of industries, but I haven't seen an actual price war being started due to a pricing tool. It's more about market environments. It's more about other influences on it. And yes, if everybody starts automating and everybody always wants to be the cheapest, you could possibly start it. But then again, I would say you have to look at the strategy and differentiate and either choose, do you want to be customer intimacy or operational excellence?
Yeah. The question, thank you, Amla, for asking is how accurate will the competitor data be? Yeah, Roy, I think this is a great question for you.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, how accurate will the competitor data be? Well, it's for example, if you do an EAN scrape, it's the same product matched because it's a European code, so it's a mandatory code to fill in. But of course, you're always still dependent on if the people are in their own web shops are connecting the right EAN to the right product, right? So we have accuracy. I would say you're probably somewhere around 95% accuracy. And that's also, for example, why we have the outlier removal in there, which I showed, is that if there was really a big difference, it will not be taken into consideration for your pricing. So there are always some fail safes in between. So yeah, how accurate would it be? I would say anywhere between 90 to 95%, depending on the market you're active in.
Yeah. Another question is, how can we actively monitor key competitors and who should we benchmarking against? Yeah, that's really a specific question. And I think it's a question you ask from your job role or your job function. So I think I need a little bit more introduction into what kind of market you're acting and what is your strategic consideration. So I think it's good to follow up with this question when we have a little bit more background information. If you follow these steps of the 6-step process, our goal of this webinar is to answer this question. So for your own company.
Yeah, I would recommend filling in the matrix we've shown to identify your key competitors, and then you can either start with manual keeping track of what they're doing or invest into scraping to get that data in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're also running out of time. Initially, the webinar was for 45 minutes, but as already said, time flies when you're having fun. Right now, thank you, Roy, for the great explanation, and thank you all for listening. If you have any questions later on, let us know. You can do it either in the LinkedIn comments or just via email, or we also can give you a call next week because we're really curious of how you evaluate this webinar and if you can apply this 6-step approach. Right now, really thank you for joining, and we're looking forward to continue the conversation about pricing.
And we're also perfectly fine if you want to contact us directly via LinkedIn. We're tagged in the post, so you can just send us a message if you still have any questions or want to have a follow-up meeting. Just let us know, and we'll be open for that.
Right. Thanks a lot, and we're looking forward to see you in the next webinar. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.